The article summary pertains to the ongoing investigation conducted by the Malaysian Competition Commission (MYCC) into 500 companies allegedly implicated in bid rigging activity concerning contracts valued at ringgit Malaysia 2 billion across various sectors. Additionally, the construction industry accounts for 43 of the total cases under review. Ahmad Fauzi Sungi, who holds the position of Head of Government Procurement Policy Section at the Ministry of Finance (MOF), has verified the matter to DH during the conference. He has further suggested that the matter might have a correlation with the corrupt practice. According to Fauzi, the government has developed an internally built system called Cartology, which has received recognition for its effectiveness in identifying potential bid rigging activities from documents transmitted through e-procurement channels. Bid rigging refers to an agreement, whether written or oral, amongst bidders that restrict or reduce competition during a tender process. The agreement can be potentially be established between bidders and a prospective bidders who abstain from submitting a bid. Bid rigging is an illegal process whereby rival entities collaborate to determine the victor of the tendering procedure. Bid rigging is deemed a severe violation under the Malaysian Competition Act of 2010. Bidder coordination impairs the bidding process and can result in a rigged price higher than what would have been achieved in a free market with a competitive bidding procedure. Auction for vehicle, homes and building projects as well as government procurement contracts might have bid rigging procedures. The practice of bid rigging has the potential to negatively impact both consumer and taxpayer, as they may be compelled to incur the burden of increased prices and procurement expense.
Business, any type of business, is very competitive, especially when bidding for jobs. Well, at least bidding is supposed to be competitive. Some companies try to avoid competition by rigging bids, and that's illegal.
Let's put our heads together on this one. If you make some changes to your bids and let me win this job, I'll fix my bid to your advantage on the next one. Makes sense?
It's illegal to submit cover bids to give the impression of a competitive bidding process. Your punishment can include a big fine, even jail time.
The issue is weak enforcement in combating corruption. In the context of public procurement, bid rigging, also known as collusive bidding, refers to the fraudulent operation that involve an agreement among the contractors participating in the bidding process. The contractors and corrupt public officials participating in the deal will collude against each other, which will result in corruption and abuse of authority. Unfortunately, the phrase bid rigging does not have a clear legal definition in Malaysia, despite the fact that bid rigging is expressly forbidden by Section 4(2)(d) of the Competition Act 2010. The significant market value and number of purchases of products and services made annually by ministry and agency through public procurement, where these transactions are subject to high risk of unlawful manipulation of price bidding, cartel and collusion of contractors and corporations. It has been proven that in the current case above is interrelated with corruption, but if only combating corruption enforcement had been effective, the agency established to prevent corruption would likewise be in question. The MACC organization has at best a mixed record. They highlight its reluctance to investigate, particularly regarding high-profile scandal, when the interests of the ruling class are at stake. They also pointed out the agency's lack of autonomy, which is partly attributable to the fact that it answers to the Prime Minister and cannot bring charges without the approval of the agency's public prosecutor. The agency needs to investigate regardless of the class because it is abusing their power. The enforcement in preventing corruption itself will not be successful if there is an agency act like that. Hence, weak enforcement in combating corruption has become one of the reasons why bid rigging happen, as it is closely related to corruption too. The second one is failure of government to monitor bidding process. One of the most widely adopted uses of internet commerce is electronic procurement, or EP. EP is a procurement system in electronic format that enables suppliers to offer their products and services to the government through the internet. This system acts as an alternative medium for suppliers of products and services to register or renew their Ministry of Finance certificate. EP automates the transition from paper-based to online procurement in the public sector. Through the use of the internet, it creates a platform for trade between domestic government agency and international supplier. The businesses need to go through a bidding process by sending their document first to EP for getting government's approval. But actually, bid rigging is is happening as well. There are a lot of bid rigging cases happening in Malaysia recently, like the case in this article. It is the sign of the failure of the government side in monitoring the bidding process. If the government had a good system in the first place, bid rigging cases would be lessened than the government already has now. It has led to extra effort in developing a new in-house award-winning system called cartology to efficiently detect any bid rigging from papers supplied through e-procurement channel, according to Ahmad Fauzi Sunib, head of Government Procurement Policy section of the Ministry of Finance. Cartography may monitor the bids and identify suspicious patterns such as several bids coming from the same IP address. It can also notice trends in submission date and time, pricing fluctuation and requirement, he added. The last one is market condition. There is a tendency for ongoing bid rigging agreement to become unstable when there are drastic shift in demand or supply. The likelihood of cooperation increases when public sector demand is steady and reliable. However, competitors' motivation to rig bids rise during times of economic upheaval or uncertainty because they are aim to replace lost revenue with collusive benefit. As an additional consequence, the risk of bid rigging to illegally gain funds from the private sector rises in times of economic crisis when access to corporate financing is limited or too costly. This is because public funds spent by the contracting authorities become a very attractive financial source for the participant in the labor market.
Now we move on to the impact of this issue. Firstly, it is inefficient and improper use of tax money. In other words, it is extremely harmful to taxpayers, which is the people who ultimately pay for all government procurement. It cheats all of the people who are working hard and paying taxes. It has the potential to raise prices and while potentially lower the quality of the products and services that people enjoy. It could also affect the actual price of the goods or services being bought or offered. The second impact of this issue is that the bid rigging schemes can hurt all of the other honest, hardworking businesses who are not part of these bid rigging activities. In situations when bids are rigged, purchasers will pay a higher price. Due to this, they will have a smaller amount of money available for other projects in which honest companies may be interested in bidding. Doing business with such trustworthy companies is a must. This may not occur if fair bids were not obtained. Thirdly, it will have a major impact on the economy as it causes pricing distortions. It drives up expenses while possibly lowering the quality of the goods and services that may be purchased as a result. It prevents customers from experiencing the advantages of competitive marketplaces such as cheaper costs and a greater variety of goods to choose from.
Malaysia atau YCC telah mengeluarkan satu keputusan akhir mengenakan penalti kewangan berjumlah next slide tunjuk dorang. Okey, mengenakan penalti kewangan berjumlah 1.548 juta 1,548,152.36 sen terhadap 8 syarikat kerana penglibatan mereka dalam aktiviti tipuan bidar yang melibatkan 4 projek berasingan berkaitan IT yang bernilai 1,925,365.90 sen yang diperolehi dari oleh Akademi Seni Budaya dan Warisan Kebangsaan ataupun ASYURA.
In this new paper, there are two theories that can be discussed. So, the first one was corruptions. There are different ways to identify and classify corruptions. The most common types or group of corruption are supply versus demand corruptions, bid versus petty corruptions, and public versus private corruptions. So, in this issue, political corruption will involve. Political corruption is a type of recurring corruption because it's very serious and involve high-level government officials. This happens when the people who are supposed to enforce the law, like lawmakers and government agents, are themselves corrupt. So, in other words, it's happened at the top level of government. Then, the second theory was transparency. Transparency is the word that means being open, communicating, and taking responsibility. It is used to build trust in democratic processes, public figures, and institutions. So, organizational transparency can be looked at in two very different ways. The first one is that the business that is more open will be able to respond more quickly to changes in the market and customer needs. This will give the business a competitive boost. Then we can discuss about the issue of transparency, where the lack of transparency. The lack of Transparency is a major issue in many countries as in Malaysia, as it can inhibit the free flow of information and lead to corruption, operation and mismanagement of resources. It also can lead to a lack of trust between citizens and the government, as well as a lack of accountability and poor governance. The third theory was accountability. So according to Frank and Klimovsky, they said that accountability in organization can be seen as having parts of role system theory, such as social control, expected behaviors, and relationship between people. Then we are going to discuss about the accountability failures. What does accountability failure mean? It means when someone fails to accept a responsibility for a situation at work that is unproductive as a result of their own action and subsequent decision. Indeed, this action is known as a lack of accountability.
The first recommendation is to design the tender process to maximize the potential participation of genuinely competing bidders. If a sufficient number of reliable bidders are able to reply to the request for proposal and are motivated to compete for the contract, effective competition can be improved. The tender process must be designed to not become too rigid. For instance, procurement officials can make it easier for companies to participate in the tender by lowering the costs associated with bidding, establishing participation requirements that do not unreasonably restrict competition, allowing companies from other regions or countries to participate, or coming up with strategies to encourage smaller companies to participate even if they can't compete for the entire contract. Another recommendation is to define requirements clearly and avoid predictability. The public procurement cycle specification and terms of reference (TOR) drafting phase is prone to bias, deceit, and corruption. It is important to prevent bias while creating specification and terms of reference. Specification should also be explicit and thorough without being heavily biased. Ideally, they should concentrate on functional performance or what needs to be accomplished rather than how it must be carried out. This will foster efficiency and inventive approaches. The success of the selection procedure depends on both the number and type of suppliers who are drawn to the tender as an outcome of how the requirements are established. The easier it is for potential suppliers to fully understand the requirements, the more certainty they will have when putting together and submitting bids. Moreover, design the tender process to effectively reduce communication among bidders. Procurement officials should be aware of the numerous circumstances that can encourage cooperation when planning the tender process. The selected bidding model, along with the tender structure and implementation, will impact the efficacy of the procurement process. An effective procurement process requires transparency requirements in order to assist in the battle against corruption. They should be complied with meticulously to prevent promoting corruption by providing data beyond what is permitted by law. However, there isn't a single guideline to use when developing a bidding process or procurement tender. It is essential to adapt tenders to the circumstances. If at all possible, take into consideration to invite potential suppliers to discuss the technical and administrative requirements of the procurement opportunity with the purchasing agency. Consider carefully regarding the information and specification they are handed over to bidders at the time of public bid opening, and ensure bidder disclose all correspondence with competitors.
In conclusion, bid rigging is unlawful. It can happen anywhere in the world and any market. Furthermore, bid rigging significantly raises the price of the goods and the services by up to 20%. There is a substantial possibility of taxpayer money being wasted. As another presenter pointed out, bid rigging is caused by government failure to monitor the procurement process, insufficient corruption enforcement, and market condition. Bid rigging schemes can harm all the others honest, hardworking businesses that are not part of these bid rigging activities, and it will have a significant impact on the economy as it causes pricing distortion. To address the issue of bid rigging, some recommendations have been made, including designing the tender process to maximize the potential participation of genuinely competing bidders, clearly defining requirements to avoid predictability, and designing the tender process to effectively reduce communication among bidders. All of the proposals are beneficial, but to reduce illegal bid rigging, all parties engaged in the bidding process must work together. That's all from our group. Thank you for watching.